They shouldn't have said that.
Willow Hayes had learned 2 things since her father died. 1. Fairy tale stepmothers exist in real life. And 2. Nobody wants you. Hurt more when it came from someone who was supposed to love you. But that night, at the charity gala where Patricia forced her to go just to serve Celeste, while tears threatened to fall, after hearing her stepsister laugh and throw out those cruel words, something impossible happened. Giovanni Campone, the most dangerous, feared, and desired man in the city, walked straight up to her and asked for a dance, and he was the kind of man who didn't take no for an answer. First of all, hello, I'm Lena, the creator of the channel and all these stories, and right now on your screen you're seeing comments from Deborah and Smith. Thank you so much for all the comments. And tell me something. In a parallel world, if a jealous stepsister wanted everything that's yours, including your love, what would you do? Answer down below, and maybe your comment will appear in the next video. Chapter 1. Nobody Wants You.
Dance with me.
I was in my tiny room, which used to be a spacious suite, but Patricia turned into a maid's quarters as soon as we buried my father. The door opened without warning, because privacy is a luxury I lost 2 years ago, along with everything else. Willow, you're going to the gala today, Patricia announced, as if she were doing me some monumental favor. I looked up from the book I was trying to read to escape reality. Me? Why? You always say I embarrass the family. Because Celeste needs someone to carry her purse and adjust her dress. She examined her perfectly manicured nails without even looking at me. You're going as an assistant. The words took a second to process. Assistant to my own sister? Stepsister, she corrected, venomous. And yes, wear something discreet. I don't want you drawing attention. She left without waiting for an answer, because my opinion never mattered anyway. I sat there, feeling that familiar mixture of humiliation and helpless rage. My phone rang, and Rosie, my best friend and the only person who still saw me as a human being, was on the other end. Will, you're going to the Campone Gala. Her voice was high with surprise. I'm forced to, as Celeste's assistant. I tried to keep my tone light, but it failed miserably. That's abuse. You should sue her. With what money, Rosie? Patricia controls everything except the coffee shop. I sighed, looking at the cracked ceiling. And I need the coffee shop to survive. But your dad left a will. You should have half of everything. Patricia's lawyers are better. They found loopholes. I closed my eyes, tired of this conversation we'd had 1,000 times. It's okay, Rosie. I survive. I always have. You deserve more than survival, Will. You deserve to be happy. That sentence kept echoing in my head while I got ready. Happiness seemed like an abstract concept, something other people deserved, but that would never be mine. The gala was at the most luxurious hotel in the city, all marble and crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my entire life. I wore a borrowed gray dress, old, that had seen better days, but it was all I had. Still, I felt pretty, until Patricia shot that look of disapproval that made it clear I wasn't up to par. Celeste paraded around in an expensive red dress, flashy, designed to attract attention, and she wanted one specific person's attention. Remember, darling, Patricia whispered to her, while I followed behind like an obedient shadow. Giovanni Campone is here. If you can get his attention. I know, Mom. Celeste practically glowed with excitement. He's single, rich, powerful. Everyone wants him, but I'm going to get him. My stomach turned. Giovanni Campone was a walking urban legend, the kind of man people whispered about in low tones, half fear, half fascination. Italian mafia boss, owner of the entire city, handsome in a dangerous way. Patricia turned to me with those cold eyes. And you stay in the background. Don't talk to anyone important. Understood? Yes, Patricia. The words came out automatically, because resistance was useless. I stayed in a corner of the huge ballroom, watching the city's elite circle like predators in expensive suits. Celeste tried, in a painfully obvious way, to get Giovanni's attention, who was at the center of the ballroom, surrounded by men in dark suits, his presence commanding the entire space. He ignored her completely, didn't even look in her direction, and her frustration was visible even from afar. She came back toward me and Patricia, practically vibrating with anger. He didn't even look at me. How rude. Try again. You're beautiful. He'll notice. Patricia gently pushed her back into the social battlefield. And then Celeste saw me. That cruel smile I knew so well spread across her face, as if she'd found a new toy to break. At least I have a chance, she said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. Look at you. Horrible dress, plain hair. My chest tightened, but I tried to keep my expression neutral, not give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Nobody wants you, Willow. The words came out like whiplashes, sharp and precise. Nobody. You've always been the reject. Even Dad loved you more out of pity. Tears started burning my eyes, and I fought against them with everything I had. Stop, Celeste. It's true. You're nothing. Nobody looks at you. Nobody wants you. Patricia laughed along, and that sound was worse than her daughter's words. I turned to leave, to escape, before they saw me cry, but then I felt something shift in the air of the ballroom. On the other side of the ballroom, Giovanni Campone had seen everything. He was with Matteo, his right-hand man, casually discussing business when his eyes captured the scene. The woman in red, flashy and desperate for attention, humiliating another one in gray. Tears in the eyes of the one in gray. Kindness in her, even in pain. Something in him awakened with a silent and absolute fury. Matteo noticed the change. Boss, what are you looking at? Injustice. The word came out cold, controlled. But Matteo had known Giovanni long enough to hear the fury underneath. Pause. Who is that woman? In gray? Matteo followed his gaze. Willow Hayes, daughter of the late Marcus Hayes. The stepmother is Patricia, that one there humiliating her. And the one in red is the stepsister. Celeste. They treat her like this publicly? Giovanni's voice got even lower, more dangerous. Apparently. Why? Giovanni didn't answer. He just handed the whiskey glass to Matteo and started walking. The entire ballroom stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. People automatically stepped aside, creating a path. Giovanni Campone was moving with absolute purpose, each step measured, his presence making the air seem heavier, denser. Everyone assumed he was going to talk to Celeste. She was the only one who had tried to get his attention all night, after all. The woman in red, who had thrown herself in his path 3 times. But he walked right past her, and that's when I saw the transformation on Celeste's face. First it was confusion, her eyebrows furrowed slightly, her head tilting, not understanding why he didn't stop. Then her eyes followed his trajectory, and the confusion transformed into shock when she realized where Giovanni was going. Her lips parted, forming a small O of surprise. The cruel smile from seconds ago melted like wax, leaving only naked disbelief. When Giovanni stopped in front of me, extending his hand, Celeste's expression turned to pure horror. The color drained from her face so fast she went white as paper. Her eyes widened, so big they seemed to take up half her face. Pupils dilated in absolute shock. Her mouth opened wider, but no sound came out, just silent air, as if someone had kicked her stomach and stolen all the oxygen from her lungs. I saw her hands close into fists so tight her knuckles turned white, the red nails she'd had done that morning digging into her own palms. Her entire body went rigid, frozen in shock and fury and humiliation, all mixed into an expression I'll never forget. And then came the rage. Red climbed up her neck, staining her pale skin, spreading across her cheeks like fire. Her nostrils flared. Her eyes, previously wide, narrowed into furious slits, fixed on me with so much hatred I almost stepped back. Almost. But Giovanni was there, in front of me, looking at me like I was the only person in the ballroom. "May I have this dance?" His voice was deep, controlled, absolutely confident. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I was frozen, unable to process that Giovanni Campone was asking me for a dance while my stepsister practically combusted with rage 3 meters away. He tilted his head slightly, and a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "It's a simple request. Dance, with me. Do you accept?" I looked over his shoulder and caught Celeste's expression again. She was shaking now, visibly shaking with fury, her hands opening and closing at her sides as if she wanted to strangle me. Patricia beside her was equally shocked, the mask of superiority finally broken, revealing pure panic, and something in me, something that had been trampled and humiliated for years, rose up. "Yes," I heard my own voice say, surprisingly firm, "I accept." Celeste's expression was the cherry on top. For 1 second, just 1 second, I saw something break in her. All the confidence, all the arrogance, all the certainty that she was better than me, superior, more worthy. Everything crumbled, and in its place was just an ordinary woman, rejected, humiliated in the same way she had humiliated me minutes earlier. It was the most satisfying thing I'd ever seen. Giovanni's hand wrapped around mine, warm and firm and careful in a way that made something tighten in my chest. He guided me to the dance floor, and the entire ballroom watched us with predatory intensity, but I barely noticed. I was too busy trying to remember how to breathe. His hand landed on my waist, the other holding my hand with a gentleness that contrasted with everything I knew about him. We started dancing, and I was shaking so much I was sure he could feel it. "You're trembling," he observed, his voice low, just for me. Sorry, I didn't expect this. The words came out fragmented, my brain still trying to process reality. Expect what? That you'd notice me. Nobody notices me. The honesty escaped before I could censor it. Something passed through his eyes, something dark and intense. I noticed. Pause. What's your name? Willow. Willow Hayes. Giovanni Campone. But you probably already know. A nervous laugh escaped. Everyone knows who you are. And are you afraid of me? The question was direct. No beating around the bush. A little. You're intimidating. Honesty again, because it seemed impossible to lie to him. But you accepted the dance anyway. I found the courage to look into his eyes, and I was surprised by the warmth I saw there. Did you give me a choice? He laughed, a rich and rare sound that made something melt inside me. Touché. We danced for a moment in silence before he spoke again. Why did your sister treat you that way? My entire body tensed. You saw? I saw. And heard. Nobody wants you. His voice got deeper, almost dangerous. She's wrong. How do you know? His eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that stole my breath. Because I want you. In this dance. In this moment. And maybe after too. My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. You don't know me. Then let me get to know you. He pulled me slightly closer. Just a few inches. But enough for me to feel the warmth of his body. Coffee. Tomorrow. With me. I work tomorrow. I have my own coffee shop. I don't know why I said that. Maybe to show that I had something, that I wasn't completely nothing. Then I'll come to your coffee shop. Give me the address. I couldn't believe this was happening. Why? Why me? Because in a room full of people pretending to be important, you're the only one who seems real. His hand gently squeezed my waist. And because nobody deserves to be treated the way your family treats you, tears burned my eyes. But this time they were different. Gratitude, relief, hope. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just show up tomorrow, at your coffee shop. And give me a chance to get to know you, okay, tomorrow. The music ended, but for a moment neither of us moved. Then slowly, with an elegance from another century, he brought my hand to his lips and kissed it, his eyes never leaving mine. Until tomorrow, Willow Hayes. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving me alone on the dance floor with the entire ballroom staring at me. But I didn't care, because for the first time in years, I felt seen. On the other side of the ballroom, Celeste was red with fury, shaking so much that Patricia had to hold her arm. He danced with her? With Willow! Patricia was equally shocked, but already recovering control, her calculating mind working. This doesn't make sense. She's nothing. I'm going to end this. He's mine. I saw him first. Calm down. Patricia squeezed her daughter's arm, her eyes already cold and scheming. Giovanni Campone doesn't get interested in ordinary girls. It was curiosity. Pity. It'll pass. What if it doesn't? Patricia's eyes gleamed with something cruel and determined. Then we'll make it pass. When I got home, I was floating. My phone rang before I even closed the door to my tiny room. Will, I saw photos from the gala. Giovanni Campone danced with you? Rosie was practically screaming with excitement. Yes, Rosie. It was unbelievable. He was kind, attentive. He wants coffee tomorrow. The words came out in an avalanche, my heart still racing. At your coffee shop? Willow, this is huge. I know, but what if it's just pity? What if he just felt sorry for me? The old fear tried to infiltrate the new happiness. Will, Giovanni Campone doesn't do anything out of pity. If he chose you, it's because he wanted to. Pause. But be careful. He's a mafia boss. His world is dangerous. I know. I lay on the bed, still wearing the gray dress that suddenly seemed like the most beautiful in the world. But for the first time in years, I felt seen, wanted. Okay, but be careful. And tell me everything after. I promise. I hung up and lay staring at the ceiling, my hand still tingling where he held it. Tomorrow. He would come tomorrow. And maybe, just maybe, nobody wants you would finally become the lie it always was. Chapter 2. Coffee and Getting to Know Each Other.
I noticed you.
I woke up with the sun hitting my face, and for one blessed moment, forgot where I was, forgot the life I had, forgot everything except the floating sensation that had filled me since the night before. Then the memory came rushing back all at once. Giovanni Campone asking for my hand to dance, his dark eyes truly seeing me, his deep voice promising coffee today, and my heart raced so fast I had to press my hand against my chest to calm it. He was coming today, to my coffee shop. Hayes, Coffee and Books, the only piece of my father that Patricia hadn't managed to rip away from me. And suddenly that small, cozy space I loved seemed inadequate, too simple, too ordinary for someone like Giovanni Campone. I jumped up, ignoring Patricia and Celeste, who were probably still sleeping after the gala, and ran to the coffee shop before even eating breakfast, because I needed to make sure everything was perfect. Rosie was already there when I arrived, because she had a key, and because she knew me far too well not to know I'd be in total panic mode. "Breathe, Will," she said, as soon as she saw me come in like a hurricane, my eyes already scanning every corner looking for imperfections. The place looks beautiful, like it always does. But what if it's not enough? I started rearranging the books on the vintage shelves my father had restored with his own hands, my hands trembling slightly. He probably frequents amazing places, 5-star restaurants. exclusive clubs, and this is just a small coffee shop with used books and it's authentic," Rosie interrupted, grabbing my shoulders and forcing me to look at her. "It's real. It's you. And last night he said you were the only real person in that entire ballroom, remember?" She was right. I knew she was. But the old fear of not being enough, of being nothing, was whispering poison in my ears. I arranged the tables for the third time, adjusted the fresh flowers I'd bought early that morning, checked the espresso machine twice, reorganized the pastries in the display case until they looked artistically perfect. Rosie watched me with that expression of amusement mixed with concern, but said nothing. Just let me channel the anxiety into productivity until the coffee shop was impeccable. 10 o'clock came and went, and every minute the hand moved seemed like an eternity, my heart jumping every time the door opened, only to sink when it was a regular customer, not him. "What if he doesn't come?" I whispered to Rosie at 10:05, my voice too small, too vulnerable. "What if yesterday was just a moment? And today he woke up and realized that." The door opened, and there he was. Giovanni Campone stepped out of a black car that was discreet but obviously expensive, so different from the ostentatious vehicles powerful men usually drove, and that somehow made him even more intimidating, because truly dangerous men didn't need to prove anything to anyone. He wore dark jeans and a white shirt with sleeves rolled up on his forearms, sunglasses hiding those intense eyes. But even dressed casually, he still carried that absolute presence that made the air seem denser around him. He entered the coffee shop, and the two customers who were there automatically looked up, because it was impossible not to look at Giovanni Campone, impossible not to feel it when he entered a space. He took off his sunglasses with a fluid motion, and his eyes found mine immediately, as if I were the only thing that mattered, the only thing he'd come looking for. "Hi," I managed to say, my voice coming out weaker than I wanted, my heart beating so loudly I was sure he could hear it from where he stood. "You came." I said I would. His voice was that deep tone I'd dreamed about all night, and he started walking through the coffee shop, eyes scanning everything, absorbing every detail. "This place is yours." It was my dad's. He left it to me in his will. The words came out automatically, but watching him lightly touch the spines of vintage books, noticing the old photos on the walls, seeing how he paid attention to every small detail that made this place special, made my chest tighten. "It's the only thing Patricia couldn't take from me." He stopped, turned to look at me with that intensity that stole my breath. "It's perfect. Like you." Heat climbed up my neck, coloring my cheeks, and I looked away because it was too much. He was too much. All of this was too much. "I'm not perfect. To me you are." He approached the counter, rested his hands on the wooden surface my father had varnished personally, and tilted his head slightly. "Can I order coffee, or did you just invite me to stand here and stare?" A laugh escaped, nervous but real. "Sorry. Yes, what do you want? Surprise me. Make what you think I'd like." There was challenge in those words, or maybe it was a test, and suddenly I wanted to pass, wanted to impress him, wanted to prove that I understood him somehow, even though we'd known each other for less than 24 hours. I went to the espresso machine, hands working on autopilot while my mind analyzed everything I knew about him, which was little but enough. Powerful man, controlling, who probably made important decisions before breakfast, who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders but never showed it, who hid depth behind that mask of danger. Strong cappuccino, I thought, because he needed something with substance, but with a touch of sweetness he probably denied himself. I worked the latte art with care I usually reserved for special occasions, creating a delicate pattern in the foam, and when I finished, there was a perfect heart floating on top. I brought it to him, hands surprisingly steady now that I was doing something I actually knew how to do, something where I had confidence. "House special cappuccino," I said, placing the cup in front of him. With an extra shot of espresso, milk steamed at the exact temperature, and I stopped, biting my lip. "A touch of cinnamon, because I thought you'd like it." Giovanni picked up the cup, looked at the art, and something passed through his eyes, something warm and soft I'd never seen in him. He brought it to his lips, took a long sip, and closed his eyes for a brief moment. When he opened them again, he was smiling, a small but genuine smile. "This is incredible." "Really? You're not just being nice." "I'm never just nice." He took another sip, savoring it. "This is better than any coffee I've ever had, and I've had coffee in very expensive places." Pause. Eyes fixed on me. "Sit with me. When you have time." I looked at Rosie, who was already practically pushing me mentally. "Do you mind covering?" She winked, grinning like an idiot. "No, go. Talk." Her expression clearly said she wanted all the details later. Giovanni had already chosen a table in the corner, away from the other customers, private but with a clear view of the door, and I noticed that even relaxed he was always alert, always aware of his surroundings, always prepared. I sat across from him, hands nervous in my lap, not knowing what to do with them. "Tell me about yourself," he said, leaning slightly forward, complete attention on me in a way that made my skin tingle. For real. Not the version your family shows. What do you want to know? Everything. Start from the beginning. And then, without fully understanding why, I started talking. I told him about my mother, beautiful and kind, who died when I was 10, leaving a hole in my chest that never completely closed. About my father who tried to be strong for me but was broken inside, and who 2 years later brought Patricia home, along with 8-year-old Celeste, and how everything changed. I was 12, I said, looking at my hands because it was easier than looking at him while exposing my wounds. And suddenly I had a stepmother and sister who looked at me like I was an intruder in my own home. Patricia was sweet in front of my dad, but when he wasn't looking, she made it clear that I was a burden, that Celeste was the priority, that I should be grateful to have a roof over my head. Giovanni said nothing, just listened, but I felt tension growing in him, muscles stiffening under his shirt, jaw clenching. I continued, because now that I'd started, the words wouldn't stop. Years of pain pouring out. My dad died 2 years ago, heart attack, and in his will he left this coffee shop to me, because he knew, I think, knew that Patricia would try to take everything. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. She kept the mansion, the bank accounts, everything else. Her lawyers found loopholes, and I didn't have money to fight. So I accepted the coffee shop and thought at least I had this. And since then, his voice was dangerously low, too controlled, as if he were holding something explosive. Since then, she treats me like a maid. Celeste constantly humiliates me. I live in that house, but it's not my home, and I work here every day saving money to get out, to have my own apartment, to finally be free. I finally looked at him, and the fury I saw in those dark eyes should have scared me, but it only made me feel protected. 1 more year, maybe. The coffee shop makes a profit, but not much. But it's okay. I'm patient. You're strong. He took my hand on the table, wrapping it with his, warm and secure, stronger than they deserve. Pause, thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand that sent shivers up my arm. What if I help you? How? Money. Apartment. Immediate exit. He said it like it was simple, like it wasn't an absurd proposal coming from a man who'd known me for 1 day. I pulled my hand from his, crossing my arms defensively. No, I don't accept charity. It's not charity. He leaned closer, and suddenly the space between us felt charged. Electric. It's an investment. In what? In you. In us. In what this could become. His eyes traveled over my face as if memorizing every detail, and my breath got stuck somewhere between my lungs and my throat. Giovanni, you barely know me. I tried to sound rational, but my voice came out weak, without conviction. But I want to know you, and I want to get you out of that toxic place. You deserve more than a maid's room and daily humiliation. He held my hand again, and this time I didn't pull away. At least think about it. I'll think about it. But I'm not promising anything. Because accepting his help seemed dangerous in ways I couldn't name. Because I was already feeling things for him that were too intense. Too fast. Fair enough. A small smile touched his lips. Can I see you again? Dinner. Tonight. I'll pick you up at 7. I should say no. Should take it slow. Should protect my heart. That was already beating differently around him. But when I looked into those dark eyes that truly saw me, that didn't judge me, that made me feel valuable, the word that came out was, yes, I'd like that. His smile grew, transforming his face from dangerous to devastatingly handsome. Great. I'll pick you up at the coffee shop at 7. He stood up, but before leaving he kissed my hand again, an old-fashioned and chivalrous gesture that made my heart melt. Until tonight, Willow Hayes. As soon as the door closed behind him, Rosie practically flew to my table. What happened? You're glowing. He wants to help me get out of the house, and he wants dinner tonight. The words came out in an amazed whisper, as if speaking too loudly would break the magic. Will, this is the beginning of everything, or it's madness. He's a mafia boss, Rosie. Reality started infiltrating the happiness bubble, cold and scary. So what? He clearly likes you, and he treats you better than your own family. She squeezed my hands, eyes shining. When was the last time someone treated you the way he treats you? Never, I admitted in a low voice, and that truth hurt and warmed at the same time. Exactly. So go to dinner. Let it happen. You deserve to be happy, Will. I know. I stopped, biting my lip. I'm starting to like him too, and that scares me, because what if he hurts me? What if it's all an illusion? Rosie pulled me into a tight hug. What if it's not? What if it's real? You'll never know if you don't try. Meanwhile, at the Hayes mansion, Patricia was on her iPad having breakfast when she saw the photos. Giovanni Campone entering Hayes Coffee and Books. Giovanni leaving an hour later, smiling. Giovanni who never smiled. The photos were on every gossip page in the city, speculation running wild. Celeste, get down here, now! Her voice echoed through the mansion, shrill and furious. Celeste came down the stairs, still in her robe, hair messy. What? Patricia turned the iPad to her and watched the color drain from her daughter's face. Giovanni went to Willow's coffee shop. Again. And look, she swiped to the next photo. He's smiling. This is not happening. Celeste grabbed the iPad, eyes scanning each photo with growing horror and fury. He's mine. I saw him first. Calm down. Let's think strategically. Patricia was already scheming, calculating mind working in overdrive. If Giovanni is interested in Willow, we use that. How? We make Willow look inadequate. We humiliate her. We show that she's not fit for his world. Pause. Cruel smile forming. She's a simple coffee shop girl. He's a mafia boss. Eventually he'll see that she's too ordinary. No class. No education to be by his side. What if it doesn't work? Patricia's eyes gleamed with pure malice. Then we separate them. By force. She took a long sip of coffee, savoring the plan forming. But first we try the subtle way. No violence yet, just calculated destruction. Celeste smiled, that cruel smile she inherited from her mother. When do we start? Today, right now. Chapter 3. Dinner and sabotage begins.
Stay with me.
7 o'clock couldn't come fast enough and at the same time was coming too fast, my stomach doing nervous flips while I closed the coffee shop early, Rosie practically pushing me out with strict orders to get ready and stop panicking. I got home prepared to climb the back stairs straight to my room without being seen, but Patricia was in the living room, and the smile she gave me when I walked past was too sweet, too venomous, the kind of smile that foreshadowed trouble. Going out, Willow? Her voice was fake honey, and every instinct in me screamed red alert. Yes, I answered shortly, not giving her information she could use against me later. With Mr. Campone, I imagine. Celeste appeared out of nowhere, arms crossed, eyes narrow with malice. The whole city is talking. Breakfast at your little coffee shop and now dinner. He must be bored. The words were designed to hurt, to plant doubt, to make me feel small. I took a deep breath, remembering the way Giovanni had looked at me this morning, the way he'd held my hand, the way he'd said I was perfect. I have to get ready, I said, and ran upstairs before they could see that the words had hit harder than I wanted to admit. In my tiny room, I found a large box on my bed, elegant wrapping in matte black paper with a silver silk bow, and my heart stopped. A small card was attached to the top. Strong masculine handwriting. For tonight. You deserve beautiful things. Jay. I opened the box with trembling hands, and the air left my lungs all at once. A black dress was folded in tissue paper, fabric so soft it felt sinful to touch. Simple cut but clearly expensive, the kind that doesn't need to show off because the quality speaks for itself. Discreet heels were included, perfect size. Because apparently Giovanni Campone paid attention to details most men didn't even notice. I put everything on as if I were in a trance, zipper sliding smoothly up my back, fabric hugging my body in a way that made me feel beautiful, desirable, valuable. I looked in the cracked mirror in my room and almost didn't recognize myself, because the woman looking back didn't look like the Cinderella who lived in a maid's room. She looked like someone who deserved to have dinner with a prince, even if that prince was a mafia boss. I did my hair simply but elegantly, light makeup because I was never good with heavy makeup, and when I came down the stairs at exactly 7, Patricia and Celeste were waiting. The expression on their faces when they saw me was almost as satisfying as seeing Celeste react when Giovanni chose me at the gala, because hatred and envy were written on every line of their faces. He bought that for you? Celeste spat the words like they were poison, eyes scanning my dress with barely disguised fury. He sent it, I corrected, keeping my voice neutral even when my heart was singing with happiness. Patricia opened her mouth to say something cruel, I'm sure, but a knock at the door interrupted her. Giovanni was punctually at 7, because men like him didn't make people wait. They commanded the time around them. I opened the door before Patricia could, and again the air left my lungs. He wore a tailored black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, a white shirt without a tie, 2 buttons open revealing a patch of tanned skin that made my mouth go dry. His hair was slicked back, strong jaw and perfect shave, and when his dark eyes saw me, something passed through them that made heat explode in my stomach. You look beautiful, he said, voice husky in a way that sent shivers down my spine. The dress is perfect on you. You didn't have to send a dress, I whispered, aware of Patricia and Celeste watching our every move behind me. He stepped closer, took my hand, and brought it to his lips. I wanted to. You deserve beautiful things. Eyes met mine, the intensity in them stealing my breath. And it's perfect on you. I heard Celeste make a strangled sound of rage behind me, but I didn't turn around. Kept my eyes on Giovanni as he intertwined his fingers with mine. Ready? Yes. My voice came out firmer than I expected. He guided me to the car, opened the door for me like an old-fashioned gentleman, and as we drove away from the Hayes mansion, I felt something loosen in my chest, as if I could finally breathe again. I looked out the window watching the house that was never really mine get smaller and smaller, and part of me wished I never had to go back. The restaurant was the kind of place I'd only seen in magazines, all dark wood and flickering candles, and waiters in tuxedos who probably made more than I did in a month. The maitre d' took us to a private table in the back, away from curious eyes, and I noticed that Giovanni had reserved the entire space around our table, creating a bubble of privacy in the middle of the crowded restaurant. Was that necessary? I asked when we sat down, gesturing to the empty tables around us. Yes, I want you all to myself tonight. No interruptions, no stares. He picked up the menu, but his eyes never left mine. Just us. Those two words, just us, made something melt inside me, something I'd kept frozen for years to protect myself from more pain. The waiter came. Giovanni ordered for both of us without consulting me, but in a way that showed he'd paid attention to everything I'd said this morning about favorite foods. And when we were alone again, he leaned forward. "Tell me about your dreams," he said. And it wasn't a casual request. It was a real demand from someone genuinely interested. "What do you want from life, Willow Hayes?" No one had ever asked me that. Not really. Not like my answer mattered. "I want to be free." The words came out before I could think. Raw and vulnerable honesty. "I want to wake up in a place that's mine, where no one can make me feel small or unwanted. I want to expand the coffee shop, maybe open a second location, create a space where people feel safe and welcome. I want to travel, see places I've only read about in books. I want to live, not just survive." He listened to every word like it was precious, eyes fixed on me with absolute attention. "You'll have all of that, I promise." "You can't promise that." I tried to smile, but it came out shaky. "You barely know me, but I want to know you. I want to know everything about you. Your fears, your dreams, what makes you happy, what makes you cry." He took my hand on the table, thumb tracing patterns on my skin that sent sparks up my arm. "And I want to give you everything you deserve." "Why?" The question escaped small. Scared. "Why me?" "Because when I saw you being humiliated at that gala, something in me woke up. Something that had been asleep for years." Pause. Jaw tightening. "I live in a violent world, Willow. A world where trust is rare and weakness is punished. I built walls so high no one could get in. And then I saw you. Kind despite the cruelty. Strong despite the pain. Real in a room full of fake people. And those walls started to crack. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. Tears burning my eyes. Giovanni, I'm not going to lie to you. I never will." His voice got deeper, more intense. "My world is dangerous. I do things most people would consider immoral. I have enemies who wouldn't hesitate to hurt me through people I love. There's violence. There's risk. There's darkness I can't erase. I should be afraid, should pull back, should thank him for dinner and run." But I looked into those dark eyes full of brutal honesty and felt something completely different. "But you have a code. You don't hurt innocence. You protect what's yours." Surprise crossed his face. "How do you know?" "Because I saw how you treated me. How you treated Rosie when you left the coffee shop today, thanking her for her service when you didn't even need to. How you reserved these tables to give me privacy, not to show off power." I took a deep breath, heart in my throat. "You're dangerous, but you're not cruel. There's a difference. And that doesn't scare you?" He was studying me, trying to understand. "It scares me, but you know what scares me more?" Pause, searching for courage. "Living my whole life safe but miserable. My whole life has been safe. I followed rules, was obedient, didn't cause trouble, and I was miserable. With you, yes, there's danger, but for the first time in years, I feel alive." Something changed in his eyes, something warm and possessive and intense. "Then stay with me. Let me protect you. Let me get you out of that toxic house. Let me give you the life you deserve. And I would be yours." The words came out in a whisper, loaded with meaning. "If you want, but I understand if you say no. My life isn't safe." I looked at him, really looked, seeing not just the dangerous man who commanded the entire city, but the man underneath, the man who had been kind to me when no one else was, who had seen me when I was invisible to everyone, who was offering not just protection, but a real partnership. "I want to try. With you." The smile that lit up his face was more beautiful than anything I'd ever seen, transforming his features from dangerous to devastating. "Good. Because I'm already obsessed, and I'm not used to not having what I want." We had dinner talking about everything, him telling me about his childhood in Italy, about how his family prepared him from a young age to take over the business, about the weight of responsibility he carried, but also the pride of protecting people. I told him about my father, about how he used to take me to the coffee shop every Saturday morning and teach me how to make perfect coffee, about how those were my favorite moments. Just the two of us. "He would love knowing you kept the coffee shop alive," Giovanni said, and there was genuine sincerity in his words. "I think so. It was his dream to create a space where the community felt at home." I smiled, remembering. "He used to say a good coffee shop can heal anything." He was right. "That cappuccino you made today was better than any medicine." His eyes sparkled with humor. "I'm going to need a daily dose now." I blushed, a warm pleasure spreading through my chest. "I can arrange that." When we left the restaurant, stomachs full and hearts lighter, camera flashes exploded around us. The paparazzi had found us, shouting questions while Giovanni pulled me close to him, his arm around my waist protective and possessive, guiding me to the car through the chaos. Inside the safety of the car, my heart was still racing. Does that always happen? Yes. You'll get used to it. He took my hand, intertwining our fingers. "Or I can make them stop if you want." "How?" A dangerous smile touched his lips. "Better not to ask." But I can. I laughed nervously, realizing I was entering a world completely different from mine. A world where power was absolute and fear was currency. But when I looked at Giovanni, at the way he was looking at me like I was the most precious thing he'd ever seen, the fear melted into something warmer. He took me home too early. A gentleman to the end, despite the desire I saw in his eyes every time he looked at me. He kissed my hand at the door, but this time his lips lingered, warm against my skin, sending heat straight to my stomach. "Good night, Willow. Dream of me, always," I whispered before I could stop the word, and the smile he gave me was worth the vulnerability. The photos came out before I even woke up the next day. "Giovanni Campone with mysterious woman," the headline screamed. Photos of us leaving the restaurant, him protecting me from the paparazzi, the way he was looking at me clear even through cameras. The whole city was speculating, and I knew Patricia would have seen it. I was right. When I came down for breakfast, she was on her iPad, Celeste beside her, both with expressions that promised a storm. "You're on every gossip page," Patricia said, voice cold as ice. "Embarrassing our family." "I'm not doing anything." I kept my voice calm even when my stomach was tight. "You're throwing yourself at a powerful man like a cheap whore," Celeste spat, face red with rage. The word cut, but I refused to show it. "I'm going out to dinner. There's a difference." Patricia stood up, approaching me with calculating eyes. "Giovanni Campone is going to get tired of you, Willow. Men like him always get tired, and when he does, you'll be left with nothing but a ruined reputation." "Maybe, but at least I'll have lived." I turned to leave, but her words followed me. "We'll see how long it lasts." 3 days passed. 3 days of Giovanni showing up at the coffee shop every day, of dinners at night, of conversations that lasted hours, of a connection growing between us in a way that scared and excited me at the same time. And then the article came out. Rosie showed me, face pale. "Will, you need to see this. Willow Hayes, gold digger. Sources close to her reveal pattern of relationships with wealthy men. Coffee shop would be a front to attract targets. Old photos of me with college classmates were distorted, taken out of context, making me look like something I never was. Family confirms opportunistic behavior since adolescence. Family. Patricia. She had done this." My hands trembled holding the tablet, tears burning my eyes. "None of this is true." "Nothing. I know, Will. Everyone who knows you knows. But what about Giovanni?" Panic squeezed my chest. "What if he believes it? What if he thinks I just want his money?" As if I'd conjured him, my phone rang. "Giovanni." "Willow, I saw the article." His voice was tense, too controlled. My heart sank. "Giovanni, it's not true. None of this is—" "I know it's not true." I stopped, my brain taking a second to process. "How do you know?" "Because I investigated you before the first coffee at your place." Pause. "I know everything about you, Willow. Every relationship you've had, every friend, every detail of your life. I don't go into anything without complete information. I should feel violated, but I only felt relief." "So you know it's a lie." "I know, and I'm going to destroy whoever wrote this." "No, please, I don't want violence." A heavy silence then. "Okay, no violence, but I'm going to sue and find out the source." A loaded pause. "I bet it was your stepmother." "Probably." Tears finally fell, relief mixed with pain. "She wants to push me away from you. She won't succeed." His voice got lower, more intense, absolutely possessive. "You're mine now, Willow, and no one touches what's mine without consequences. Understood?" That possessiveness should scare me, but it only made heat explode in my chest. "Understood. Good. I'll see you in an hour. I have a surprise for you." Is our protagonist being wise and letting emotion speak louder? That's what we're going to find out very soon. Chapter 4. Moving Out and Celeste Attacks.
This is yours.
The surprise Giovanni had promised arrived in the form of silver keys gleaming in the palm of his hand when he showed up at the coffee shop exactly 1 hour after the call, that small smile I was starting to recognize as exclusively mine, touching his lips. I looked at the keys, then at him, my heart already racing because some part of me knew what this meant before he even spoke. "An apartment. In your name. The lease already signed with the realtor." He placed the keys in my hand, closing my fingers around them. "You can move in today, tomorrow, whenever you want, but you can leave that toxic house now." My throat tightened, emotion rising so fast I had to blink several times to push away the tears. "Giovanni, this is too much. I can't accept." "You can, and you will." His voice had that commanding tone that didn't accept discussion, but his eyes were gentle, understanding. "Before you argue, the rent is market value. Nothing absurd, and you'll pay with the coffee shop's profit like you insisted. I just covered the first 3 months to give you time to get organized." 3 months? My voice came out small, incredulous. 3 months, which you'll pay me back if it makes you feel better, although I'd rather consider it a gift. He cupped my face with both hands, thumb tracing my cheek. "Willow, you deserve a place of your own, a place where you can lock the door and know you're safe, that no one will humiliate you or make you feel small. Let me give you this." And how could I say no when he was looking at me like that, as if my happiness were the most important thing in his world? "Okay," I whispered, tears finally escaping. "Okay, I accept. but I'm paying back every cent. You're stubborn." He laughed low, the sound vibrating in his chest in a way I felt even without touching him. "Very. Better get used to it. I already have." He kissed my forehead, a gesture so tender it made my heart melt completely. "Want to see the apartment now?" 20 minutes later, we were in front of a brick building in a safe but not ostentatious neighborhood, exactly the kind of place I would have chosen if I had money. And when Giovanni opened the door to the apartment on the 3rd floor, the air left my lungs. It was small, just one bedroom, a living room and a kitchenette, but it had huge windows letting the sun in, a wooden floor that creaked slightly under my feet, a tiny balcony overlooking the tree-lined street. It was perfect. "It's small," Giovanni said, watching my reaction carefully. "It's mine." I spun in the middle of the empty room, arms open, laughing, because for the first time in years, since my father died, I had something that was truly, completely mine. For the first time in so long, something is just mine. He watched me with an expression I couldn't decipher, something warm and possessive and almost reverent. "You deserve this, and so much more." I stopped spinning, facing him, my heart beating too hard, my emotions too close to the surface. "Thank you for everything, for seeing me, for believing in me, for—" I didn't finish the sentence because he closed the distance between us, hands framing my face, and for the first time since we met, he really kissed me. It wasn't like the gentlemanly hand kiss he'd given me other times. This was pure fire, absolute intensity, his mouth capturing mine with a hunger that stole all the air from my lungs. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, forehead resting against forehead, his eyes were dark with a desire that made heat explode in my stomach. "Sorry," he said, voice hoarse. "I shouldn't have." "Don't apologize." I held his face, keeping him close. "Don't you dare." A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. "You're incredible, Willow Hayes, and I'm completely gone for you." "Good, because I'm gone for you too." The admission came easier than I thought, a raw but liberating honesty. We stayed like that for a moment, just holding each other in the empty apartment, and then he kissed my forehead again, a gesture that was quickly becoming my favorite. "When do you want to move?" "Friday. Give me a few days to organize things. Talk to Patricia." Just thinking about telling her made my stomach tighten, but it also brought a wave of satisfaction I couldn't deny. On Thursday night, after 2 days planning every detail of the move with Rosie's help, I found Patricia and Celeste in the living room. They were watching some reality show, wine glasses in hand, and when I walked in, both looked at me with that mixture of disdain and irritation I knew so well. "I'm moving out," I announced, keeping my voice firm even when my hands trembled slightly. The remote fell from Patricia's hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. "What?" "I'm moving out. Friday. I have an apartment." Celeste practically jumped off the couch, wine spilling slightly from her glass. "Where? You don't have money." "I do, and I have an apartment. I'm leaving Friday and not coming back." Each word was a small victory, a gradual liberation from the prison this house had become. "Giovanni is paying for you, isn't he?" Celeste's voice went up several octaves, hysteria starting to color her words. "You're a gold digger, a whore." Exactly what the article said. The words still cut, even expecting them, but I refused to let it show. "No, I pay, with my money, from my coffee shop." I looked directly at Patricia, seeing the rage growing in her eyes. "But even if he paid, it would be better than living here being treated like trash." Patricia stood up, approaching me with an expression that would have made me back down years ago, but now just made me raise my chin higher. "You're ungrateful. After everything I did for you, you did nothing for me except humiliate me." The words exploded from me, years of anger finally finding a voice. "You turned me into a maid in my own house, let your daughter torture me, tried to take everything my father left me, and you still have the nerve to talk about gratitude? Get out of my house!" Patricia screamed, face red with fury, with pleasure. "Friday, and I'm never coming back." I turned to leave, but Celeste's words stopped me. "He's going to get tired of you. When he sees who you really are, he's going to throw you away like garbage." I looked over my shoulder, and for the first time in years, I smiled at my stepsister with pure confidence. "We'll see." Friday morning came too fast and too slow, my anxiety and excitement mixing in a way that I could barely sleep. By 8 in the morning, I already had all my boxes ready, which were pathetically few, just clothes and some books and photos of my father, because everything else in that house belonged to Patricia, and I didn't want anything that carried a memory of her. At 9 o'clock sharp, 3 black cars stopped in front of the mansion. Giovanni got out of the first with Matteo, and 2 more men who looked more like security than moving helpers, but who picked up my boxes with silent efficiency. Patricia and Celeste watched from the living room window, faces twisted with rage, and something that almost looked like fear, because Giovanni's presence made it clear that I was no longer alone, no longer vulnerable. "That's it?" Giovanni asked, looking at the 4 boxes that constituted all my possessions. They kept the rest: furniture, decorations, everything from my dad. I tried to keep my voice neutral, but the pain leaked through. "But it's okay. I'm starting from scratch." He pulled me close, kissing my hair. "Not from scratch. With me. And if you need furniture, I already bought some. Used, but good. I smiled at him, touching his face. Giovanni, I need to do this on my own. I need to prove to myself that I can. Something passed through his eyes. Admiration, maybe, or pride. Okay, but if you need anything, I'm here. I know. And that means everything. And it did, more than I could put into words, knowing that for the first time in years, someone was on my side. Someone who wasn't going to abandon me or betray me. Meanwhile, at the Hayes mansion, Patricia was furious, pacing back and forth across the living room while Celeste whimpered on the couch. She left, with his help, and now they're going to get even closer. Patricia stopped, turning to her daughter with eyes gleaming with dangerous determination. Then you go to him, directly, Monday, at his office. What, Mom? He doesn't even look at me. Exactly why you're going in person. Plant doubts about her intentions. Say she's always been manipulative, that she's using him. Patricia sat down, picking up her phone. I'll get his secretary to let you in. Money solves everything. Celeste hesitated, but the idea of regaining some control, of planting poison against Willow, was too tempting. Okay, I'll go. Monday morning, Celeste walked into the corporate building where Giovanni kept his legitimate businesses, heart pounding with nervousness and anger mixed together. The secretary, a blonde woman Patricia had bribed generously, let her go straight through to the office on the top floor. Giovanni was behind a huge mahogany desk, reviewing papers, and when Celeste walked in without knocking, he looked up with an expression so cold she almost backed away. How did you get in here? Giovanni, we need to talk. Celeste forced confidence into her voice. Closing the door behind her, he leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. About Willow. She's not what you think. The words came out in a desperate flood. She's manipulative. Always has been. My dad spoiled her, and she learned to get everything she wanted by pretending to be a victim. Giovanni said nothing for a moment, just studied her with that intensity that made most people tremble. Interesting, because I saw you humiliating her, publicly, at the gala. Celeste stammered, face turning red. It was a misunderstanding. I was stressed. It wasn't. He stood up, and even from across the desk, his presence was absolute, dominant, making the air seem heavier. And now you come here, invade my office, trying to poison my opinion of her. Each word came out sharp, dangerous. Do you really think I'd believe you over her? Get out. The word was said low, but carried so much power, so much implicit threat, that Celeste froze, before I lose my patience. But I just wanted... Giovanni walked around the desk, and his presence so close made Celeste back up until her back hit the door. Get out. Now. And never come back. If I see you near me or Willow again, there will be consequences. Understood? Celeste nodded frantically, hands shaking as she opened the door and practically ran out, terror and humiliation burning in her cheeks. She had failed, completely. As soon as Celeste left, Giovanni picked up the phone and called me. I answered on the second ring, my heart jumping like it always did when I saw his name on the screen. Hi, your sister tried to convince me you're manipulative. His voice was calm, almost amused. I sighed, a mixture of anger and embarrassment filling me. Sorry, she's pathetic? Yes, but don't worry. I sent her away before she could finish her speech. Pause. How's the apartment? Perfect. I'm still organizing some things, but it's becoming a home. I smiled, looking around my small but mind space. Rosie helped me hang the curtains yesterday. Great. So you're free tonight? There was something in his voice, an expectation that made my stomach tighten with anticipation. I am. Why? Dinner to celebrate your new life away from them. Pick you up at 7? My heart was so full it hurt. Yes. I'd love that. Perfect. See you tonight, Miyakara. He hung up, and I stood there holding the phone with an idiotic smile on my face, because I had an apartment, I had a life, and I had a man who saw me, who protected me, who was becoming as essential as breathing. Chapter 5. Apartment and Threat.
I'll protect you.
The apartment looked even more beautiful when the last boxes were placed on the floor, when photos of my father finally found a place on walls that were truly mine, when the books he'd given me over the years were organized on the wooden shelves that Giovanni had forgotten to mention were already installed. Giovanni and Matteo had left an hour ago to give me space, to let me absorb the reality of finally having a home, and I stood in the middle of the empty living room, hugging one of the pillows I'd bought online, just feeling. Rosie arrived with a pizza and a bottle of cheap wine at 7, her smile so big it lit up the entire apartment. Will, it's perfect. It's so you. She spun through the room, touching the light curtains I'd chosen, admiring the view from the window. And when she finally stopped, there were tears in her eyes. You did it. You really got out. I did. The word came out in an amazed whisper, because even having lived through the entire day, even having carried every box, even having turned the key in the lock for the first time, it still seemed too surreal to be true. I have a place of my own, Rosie. No one can take this from me. We ate the pizza sitting on the floor because the table I'd bought hadn't arrived yet, and laughed laughed until our stomachs hurt, drank the cheap wine from plastic cups because I hadn't bought glasses yet, and it was the happiest meal I'd had in years. When Rosie finally left at 10, hugging me so tight she almost broke my ribs, I was alone in my apartment for the first time. The silence was different here, I noticed while walking barefoot across the wooden floor that creaked softly under my feet. At the Hayes mansion, silence had always been heavy, oppressive, full of an unspoken tension that made my shoulders permanently tense. But here, the silence was peace, was freedom, was the promise that when I woke up tomorrow no one would make me feel small or unwanted. My phone rang, breaking the gentle silence, and Giovanni's name lit up the screen, making my heart race the way it always raced when it came to him. "Hi," I answered, unable to hide the smile in my voice. "How are you? Settled in?" His voice was warm, genuinely interested, and I could perfectly imagine the expression on his face while he spoke. "I am. Rosie just left. We ate pizza on the floor and drank horrible wine from plastic cups, and it was perfect." I laughed, throwing myself onto the couch that had arrived this morning. A thrift store find I'd cleaned until it shined. "Thank you for everything, for helping me get out, for believing in me, for—" "Can I come over?" He interrupted me, and there was something in his voice, an urgency that made my skin tingle. "I want to see you. I need to see you." My heart jumped, beating against my ribs in a way that was half nervousness, half pure anticipation. "Yes, please, come." He arrived 20 minutes later, knocking on the door in a way I was already learning to recognize. 3 firm and confident knocks, and when I opened the door, the air left my lungs all at once. He still wore the suit pants from earlier today, but had taken off the jacket. The sleeves of his white shirt rolled up on his forearms, revealing the muscles I'd felt under my hands before, his hair slightly messy, as if he'd run his hands through it several times. "Hi," I managed to say, my voice coming out huskier than normal, my body already responding to his proximity in a way that should embarrass me but only made me feel alive. "Hi," he entered, closing the door behind him, and suddenly the apartment seemed smaller, the air denser, every inch between us charged with an electricity that made my skin tingle. "Are you happy here?" "I am. Happier than I've been in years." I twisted my hands nervously, not knowing what to do with them, not knowing how to act when he was looking at me like that, with that intensity that stole all the air from the room. "It's small, but it's mine, and that makes all the difference." He moved closer, each step measured and deliberate, until he was so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the golden flecks in his dark eyes, could count every thick lash that framed that penetrating gaze. "Willow," he said my name like it was a prayer, like it was the only word that mattered, and then his hands were on my face, framing my jaw with a gentleness that contrasted with the absolute strength I knew he possessed. "Yes," I whispered, unable to speak louder when he was so close, when I could feel his breath mixing with mine. "Can I kiss you? Really this time. Not just a quick kiss, but kiss you the way I've been dreaming about since I saw you at that gala." The words came out in a deep tone, loaded with a desire that made heat explode in my stomach, that made my legs go weak. "Yes," I answered, and then there was no more space between us, no more air, just his mouth capturing mine in a kiss that erased everything else in the world. It was different from the kiss in the empty apartment days ago. This was deeper, more intense, as if he were trying to memorize me through touch, as if he were marking every inch of me as his. My hands went to his hair, fingers intertwining in the dark strands, and when he deepened the kiss, when his tongue touched mine in a dance that was as old as time, but felt new and exciting with him and me, a moan escaped from my throat. He responded by pulling my body against his, one hand sliding to the small of my back, pressing me so close I could feel every hard line of his body against mine, and suddenly we were moving, him guiding me backward until my back met the wall, and then it was just us, just this moment, just the feeling of his mouth on mine, his hands on my body, the way he made me feel desired and precious and completely alive. When we finally pulled apart to breathe, both panting, he rested his forehead against mine, eyes closed, jaw tense with a control I could see fighting beneath the surface. "If I don't stop now, I won't stop," he said, voice so hoarse I barely recognized it, and the sound sent shivers down my entire spine. My hands were still in his hair, my body still pressed against his against the wall, and when I spoke, my voice was full of a certainty that came from a deep place inside me. "Maybe I don't want you to stop." His eyes opened, meeting mine, dark with a desire that was almost tangible. "Willow, you need to be sure, because once we cross this line, once I have you completely, there's no going back. You'll be mine, and I'll be yours, and I won't let you go, ever." The possessiveness in his words should scare me, should make all my self-preservation instincts scream, but instead it only made that heat in my stomach intensify, only made my heart race faster. "I'm sure," I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I want you, Giovanni. I want you. I want this. I want to be yours. Something changed in his eyes, some final barrier falling, and then he was picking me up, my legs automatically wrapping around his waist as he carried me through the apartment, until he found my bedroom, until he placed me gently on the bed I'd made with new sheets that morning. He hovered over me, supporting his weight on his forearms, and for a moment just looked at me, really looked at me, as if memorizing every detail. "You're beautiful," he said, and there was reverence in his voice, a genuine admiration that made tears burn my eyes. "The most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and you're mine." "Yours," I agreed, pulling his face back to mine. And when we kissed this time, when his hands began to explore, when clothes began to disappear, it was with an urgency mixed with tenderness that made my heart overflow. He was gentle, careful, making sure every touch brought pleasure. And when we finally became one, when he filled all the empty spaces inside me I didn't even know existed, I whispered his name like a prayer, and he whispered mine like a promise. I woke up with the sun filtering through the curtains I'd forgotten to close the night before, warming my face, and for a moment I forgot where I was. Then I felt the weight of the arm around my waist, the warmth of the body pressed against my back, and memories of the night before came back in a wave that made my face heat up and my heart sing. Giovanni was awake, I realized when I turned in his arms, those dark eyes already watching me with an expression that made butterflies explode in my stomach. "Good morning," he said, voice still husky with sleep, and the sound made something melt inside me. "Good morning." I touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw, marveling that this was real, that he was here, in my bed, in my apartment, with me. "How long have you been awake?" "A while, just watching you." A small smile touched his lips. "You're beautiful when you sleep. Peaceful." I blushed, hiding my face in his chest. "Isn't that creepy?" "No." He kissed the top of my head, arm squeezing me closer. "It's perfect. You're perfect. This is perfect." We stayed like that for a long moment, just enjoying the closeness, the new intimacy between us, until finally, reluctantly, he got up. "I need to go. I have a meeting at 9 I can't miss." He dressed, and I watched from under the sheets, memorizing every movement, every line of his body. When he was fully dressed, he came back to the bed, leaning down to kiss me deeply, possessively. "Dinner tonight? At my place this time. I want to show you where I live." "Yes, I'd love that." My heart was so full it hurt, happiness overflowing in a way that was almost scary in its intensity. But while Giovanni left my apartment with one last kiss and a promise to pick me up at 7, on the other side of town, at the Hayes mansion, Patricia was making a call that would change everything. The phone rang 3 times before a rough voice with a heavy Russian accent answered. "Who is this?" "My name is Patricia Hayes. I have information that might interest Mr. Volkov. Information about Giovanni Campone." She paused, savoring the moment, the power she felt in her hands. "About a weakness of his that no one else knows." A silence on the other end then. "Continue. I'm listening." "Giovanni Campone is obsessed with a woman. Willow Hayes, my stepdaughter. He's completely blind when it comes to her. Would do anything to keep her safe." Patricia smiled, a cruel and calculating smile. If someone wanted to hurt Giovanni, if someone wanted control over him, she would be the perfect key. Konstantin Volkov, Giovanni's most dangerous rival, the man who had tried to take his territory for years without success, laughed low. "Interesting. Very interesting. And why are you giving me this information for free?" "It's not free. I want her away from him. You want power over him. Our objectives align perfectly." Her voice was cold, calculated, completely devoid of any remorse. "Do what you want with the information. Just make sure she's out of his life." "Oh, I'll do much more than that." Konstantin hung up, and Patricia leaned back in her chair, satisfaction spreading through her chest. The game had only just begun. Chapter 6: Kidnapping and Rescue.
Please, make yourself comfortable.
A week had passed since I moved into the apartment. A week of waking up with the sun hitting my face instead of hearing Patricia screaming orders. A week of having dinner with Giovanni almost every night. A week of happiness that seemed too fragile to be real. I should have paid attention to that feeling of fragility. Should have realized that good things in my life never lasted very long without some catastrophe trying to destroy them. It was a Thursday night, and I was alone at the coffee shop because Rosie had left early for a family commitment, and I closed Hayes Coffee and Books at 10 at night like I always did, locking the front door, turning the sign to closed, counting the money from the register with the automatic movements of someone who'd done this for years. The neighborhood was quiet, just a few cars passing occasionally, the streetlights creating small pools of yellowish illumination on the sidewalk, and I was so absorbed in counting the bills that I didn't hear the black van stopping in front of the coffee shop until it was too late. The door burst open with a crash that made my heart stop, the bell chiming in a distorted way, and 3 enormous men entered, faces covered with black masks, bodies blocking any chance of escape. My brain took one precious second to process what was happening, a second I could have used to scream or run or do anything besides stand there frozen in pure terror. "Who are—" I started, but my voice died when one of them approached, too fast for me to react, a huge hand covering my mouth while his arm wrapped around my waist, lifting me off the ground like I weighed nothing. "Konstantin sends his regards," the man said in a heavy Russian accent that made fear explode in my stomach, because I knew who Konstantin Volkov was. Giovanni had told me about his most dangerous rival, the man who'd been trying to take his territory for years. I fought with everything I had, kicking and thrashing, trying to scream against the hand muffling my sound, my nails scratching his arm hard enough to draw blood, but he was too strong. There were too many of them, and in seconds I was being dragged out of the coffee shop, into the van waiting with the engine running. Across the street, hidden in the shadows between two buildings, Rosie had come back because she'd forgotten her purse at the coffee shop, and saw everything. Saw the men grabbing me, saw the black van, heard my muffled screams, and with hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone, she dialed the only number that mattered. Giovanni was in a meeting when the phone rang, discussing an import deal with 3 men in expensive suits, but when he saw Rosie's name on the screen, something in him alerted, because Rosie never called him, always respected that our relationship was ours. He answered immediately, raising a hand to silence the men around the table. "Rosie? What? Giovanni? They took Willow. A black van. Masked men." She was screaming. Rosie's voice was hysterical, words coming out in a flood of panic. The world stopped. Every sound died. Every thought that wasn't Willow disappeared, replaced by a cold, absolute fury that froze his blood while burning his soul. "Where?" The word came out low. "Too controlled. Too dangerous. In front of the coffee shop. 2 minutes ago, they threw her in a van and took off. Stay there. No police. I'll handle it." Giovanni hung up, turning to the men in the room who were all looking at him with varying degrees of concern, because they'd never seen this expression on their boss's face. This combination of icy fury and barely contained desperation. "Get out," he ordered, and the men stood up so fast the chairs almost fell, understanding that something terrible had happened, that the Giovanni Campone, who commanded with absolute control, was seconds away from exploding. As soon as the door closed, he called Matteo. Constantine took Willow. A silence on the other end of the line. Then, "How do you know? It could be anyone. Who else would it be?" Giovanni cut him off, already moving, grabbing his jacket, checking the gun at his waist out of pure instinct. "Get the men. All of them. We're getting her. Now. Boss, what if it's a trap? What if he's waiting for you to react exactly like this?" "I don't care." The words came out in a growl, fury finally leaking through the control. "She's mine. No one touches what's mine and lives. Understood? No one. Understood. 20 men. Armed. I'll meet you at the office in 15 minutes. Matteo hung up, and Giovanni left the building in steps so fast they were almost a run, because every second Willow was in Constantine's hands was torture, was a failure on his part to protect the only thing that truly mattered. I was tied to a chair in a warehouse that smelled of mold and rust, hands behind my back, bound with some rope that cut into my skin every time I tried to move, panic beating against my ribs so hard I could barely breathe. The men who grabbed me were standing near the door, talking in Russian in low voices. And then I heard footsteps, slow and measured, echoing in the empty space. Konstantin Volkov entered, and he was exactly as Giovanni had described, tall and muscular, with a scar running across the left side of his face, eyes cold as ice, a cruel smile on his lips as he approached. "So you're the woman who made Giovanni Campone weak." "He's not weak." The words came out before I could stop them. Defiance mixed with fear. Constantine laughed, a humorless sound that made me shiver. "He is, for you, and now I use you to control him." He paused, tilting his head. "Or to kill him. Haven't decided yet." My stomach turned, fear becoming pure terror. "You won't succeed." Confident. "Let's see how long you keep that confidence." He walked away, sitting on an old crate, and waited as if he had all the time in the world. It took 3 hours for Giovanni to track down my location. 3 hours of using every contact he had, of threatening and bribing informants, of following every lead, until he finally discovered the abandoned warehouse in the suburbs where Constantine did his dirtiest business. When he finally had the address, he gathered the 20 men Matteo had called, all armed, all loyal, all ready to go to war for him. "Get in fast, minimize casualties but prioritize Willow. Anything happens to her, any scratch, and heads will roll. Understood?" Giovanni spoke with absolute authority, and all the men nodded, understanding it wasn't just an order, it was a promise. They stormed the warehouse with the precision of a military operation, doors exploding under coordinated kicks, gunfire starting immediately when Constantine's men reacted. But Giovanni's team was better trained, more motivated, because they were fighting not just for territory, but for something their boss loved. I heard the gunshots and knew it was Giovanni, knew with an absolute certainty that burned through the fear. And when the door to the small office where Constantine was keeping me exploded, when I saw Giovanni standing there with a gun in his hand and an expression on his face that was pure death, something inside me broke with pure relief. But Constantine was fast, pulling a gun and pressing it against my temple before Giovanni could shoot. One step and she dies. Giovanni stopped, frozen, but his eyes never left mine, and I could see the absolute fury in them, the silent promise that this wasn't going to end like this. Constantine, you made a fatal mistake. What? Constantine pressed the gun harder against my head, and I closed my eyes, trying not to cry. You took the only person I care about. Pause, loaded with promise. Matteo! A shot echoed, too loud in the small space, and the gun fell from Constantine's hand with a metallic clatter. Matteo was in the doorway with his gun still raised, the perfect shot having hit Constantine's hand without hurting me. Giovanni crossed the space in 2 steps, freeing me from the ropes, pulling me against his chest so tight I could barely breathe, but I didn't care because I was safe. He had come. He had saved me. I found you. You're safe. I was so scared. I cried against his chest, hands clutching his shirt. I know, but it's over. It's over. He kissed my hair, my forehead, my face, as if he needed to make sure I was real. Constantine was on the floor holding his bleeding hand, and Giovanni turned to him with an expression so cold it made even Matteo step back. You never touch her again. Never look in her direction. Never think about her. Are you going to kill me? Constantine spat, but there was fear in his eyes. Worse, I'm going to destroy you. Your businesses, your reputation, everything. You'll beg for death before I'm done with you. Giovanni motioned to Matteo. Take him. You know what to do. Yes, boss. Matteo and 2 other men grabbed Constantine, dragging him out. In the car driving back to the apartment, I was shaking so badly my teeth were chattering, shock finally hitting now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Giovanni held me against him in the back seat, one hand stroking my hair, keeping me anchored. How did they find me? My voice came out small, broken. I don't know, but I'll find out, and whoever gave them the information will pay. His voice was hard, unforgiving. I closed my eyes, knowing the truth deep in my heart. It was my stepmother, I'm sure of it. Why do you think that? But by the way his voice tensed, he already knew I was right, because she's the only one who'd benefit from this. If I died, Constantine would control you or kill you, and she'd be free of me. Tears fell, a mixture of rage and pain. She hates me so much she was willing to see me dead. The fury that passed through Giovanni's eyes was absolute. She'll pay. No, please, I don't want more violence. I held his face, forcing him to look at me. I just want distance. Let her go. She's not worth it. Willow, she almost got you killed. I know, but revenge won't change that. I just want peace. I want to live my life away from her. Please. My hands were shaking, but my voice was firm. Giovanni visibly struggled, the desire to destroy Patricia versus the desire to give me what I was asking for. Okay, for you, but she never touches you again, never gets near you again, and if she tries, all bets are off. Understood. Understood. And I allowed myself to collapse against him, letting him hold me as we drove back home, to safety, to the life I almost lost. Chapter 7. Final Confrontation.
Marry me.
Yes!
And proposal. The next day, before the sun had even fully risen, Giovanni stood in front of the Hayes mansion, a cold and controlled fury running through his veins like liquid ice. He had promised Willow he wouldn't do anything violent, that he'd leave Patricia alone, but he hadn't promised he wouldn't visit, that he wouldn't make it absolutely clear what the consequences would be if she dared breathe near Willow again. He knocked on the door hard enough to wake the entire house, 3 heavy knocks that echoed like thunder, and when Patricia opened the door still in her robe, hair messy from sleep, the color drained from her face so fast she went white as paper. Giovanni Campone. He didn't wait for an invitation, simply walked in, his presence filling the entrance hall in a way that made Patricia instinctively step back. You gave the information to Constantine. I didn't, she started, but the lie died on her lips when she saw the expression on his face, when she realized denying was useless. Don't lie to me. The words came out low, dangerous, each syllable loaded with implicit threat. I have proof. The call was traced. From your phone to one of Constantine's men. You sold Willow's location to the enemy. She almost died. Patricia trembled, hands closing on the belt of her robe. I just wanted her to stay away from you. She doesn't deserve you. The fury that exploded in Giovanni was so intense he had to clench his hands into fists, to keep from doing something he couldn't undo later, because he'd promised Willow, and a promise to her was sacred. She deserves everything. And you don't even deserve to breathe the same air as her. Please, but Willow asked me not to hurt you. so I won't, this time. He moved closer, and Patricia backed up until her back hit the wall, eyes wide with pure terror. But listen carefully. If you try to contact her again, if you speak her name, if you even think about her, I'll come back, and it won't be a conversation. Understood? Patricia nodded frantically, tears running down the face that was usually so composed, so arrogant. Yes, I understand. Good. Giovanni turned to leave, but stopped when he saw Celeste on the stairs. Eyes wide, face pale with fear. He walked to the foot of the stairs, looking up at her with the same icy intensity. And you, same rule. Willow doesn't exist for you anymore. Forget her. Or suffer the consequences. Celeste couldn't even respond, just nodded mutely, and Giovanni left the Hayes mansion knowing he'd never need to return, that Patricia and Celeste had learned their lesson in the clearest way possible. When he returned to Willow's apartment, she was awake, sitting on the couch wrapped in a blanket, eyes red as if she'd cried all night. As soon as she saw him, she got up and ran into his arms, and he held her like she was the most precious thing in the world, because she was. You went to her, Willow said against his chest. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I did, but I didn't hurt her. A promise is a promise. He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the smell of the shampoo she used. But I made it very clear that if she tries anything again, all bets are off. Willow pulled back enough to look into his eyes. Thank you for respecting what I asked. I know it was hard for you. It was, but you're more important than my revenge. He held her face with both hands, thumbs wiping away the tears that were still falling. How are you, really? Scared, tired, but alive, thanks to you. A small smile touched her lips. You saved me. I'll always save you. I'll always protect you. It was an absolute promise. A fundamental truth. The weeks turned into months, and slowly the terror of the night of the kidnapping began to fade, replaced by a routine that was as ordinary as it was precious. Giovanni showed up at the coffee shop every day without fail, drinking the cappuccino Willow made especially for him, staying until the rush died down just to spend time with her. They had dinner together almost every night, sometimes at expensive restaurants, sometimes at her apartment with takeout, and conversations flowed so easily that hours passed like minutes. He took her to meet the important people in his life, the men who worked for him, and who treated her with a respect that bordered on reverence when they realized how much she meant to their boss. She took him to meet the regular customers at the coffee shop, the people who had become family in a way, and seeing him interact with them with a kindness he reserved only for her and the people she loved made her heart overflow. Rosie became a friend to Giovanni too, initially suspicious of such a dangerous man, but eventually won over by the obvious way he loved Willow, by the way he looked at her like she was the sun around which his world orbited. 3 months after the night of the kidnapping, Giovanni took Willow to a restaurant she'd never heard of, a place so exclusive it didn't even have a sign on the door, just a discreet number, and a doorman who recognized them immediately. The table was on a private terrace, overlooking the entire city spread below like a carpet of twinkling lights, and there were candles creating an atmosphere so romantic that Willow's heart started beating faster before she even sat down. "This is beautiful," she whispered, eyes scanning the view, the fresh flowers in the center of the table, the way everything seemed orchestrated with meticulous care. "Not as beautiful as you." Giovanni pulled out the chair for her, and when he sat down, she noticed his hands were slightly trembling, and Giovanni Campone never trembled. They had dinner talking about everything and nothing, about her plans to expand the coffee shop, about a trip to Italy he wanted to take with her to meet his family, about a future that before seemed impossible, but now stretched ahead of them full of promises. And when dessert arrived, when the plates were placed in front of them, Giovanni didn't touch his, just kept looking at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Willow, I have a question," he said, and there was something in his voice, a nervousness that was so rare, so unexpected, that it made all her thoughts stop. "Go ahead." Her heart was racing, beating against her ribs with a force that was almost painful. He took a deep breath, and then, in a way that seemed to happen in slow motion, he stood up from his chair and knelt beside the table. The entire world stopped. The air left Willow's lungs all at once. Tears started burning her eyes before he even spoke. "Willow Hayes, you came into my life when I least expected it. I was alone, surrounded by people but completely isolated, living a life that was about power and control, but empty of any real meaning. And then I saw you at that gala, being humiliated but still kind, broken but still strong, and something in me woke up. The words came out in an honest, raw torrent. You made me want to be better. You gave me a peace I never thought I'd find. You became the center of my world, the reason I wake up every day with a smile. And I love you, Willow. I love you so much it sometimes scares me." Tears were falling freely now, Willow's hands covering her mouth in absolute shock, and Giovanni pulled a small blue velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring so beautiful it stole what remained of her breath. A perfectly cut solitaire diamond on a simple platinum band, elegant without being ostentatious, exactly what she would have chosen if she could choose. "Will you marry me? Be my wife, my partner, my family. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy, protecting you, loving you the way you deserve to be loved. For a moment, Willow couldn't speak, the emotion too big, too overwhelming, closing her throat in a grip that made words impossible. But then she nodded, frantically, and the words finally came out in a happy sob. Yes, 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 1,000 times yes. The smile that lit up Giovanni's face was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen, transforming his features in a way that made her heart melt completely. He took the ring from the box with hands that still trembled slightly and slid it onto her finger, and the fit was perfect, as if it had been made exactly for her. And then he was standing up, pulling her up too, and kissed her there on the terrace under the stars, with a passion that stole all the air from the space, with a silent promise of forever. The entire restaurant, the few other customers at the other private tables, the waiters who had stopped to watch, all applauded, and when they finally pulled apart, both laughing and crying at the same time, Willow looked at the ring on her finger and thought that never, not in a million years, had she imagined that the life that began with "nobody wants you" would end with a man kneeling in front of her, promising to love her forever. Giovanni held her face, thumbs wiping away the tears that kept falling. "You made me the happiest man in the world. You made me the happiest woman in the world," she responded, and it was the absolute truth. Pure and simple. They went back to her apartment that night, but Giovanni didn't stay, kissing her at the door with a reverence that was new. "I want to do things right. Proper engagement, planned wedding, everything the way you deserve. I already have everything I deserve. I have you." But she smiled, touching his face. "But okay, we'll do it your way." When he left, Willow threw herself on the couch and looked at the ring shining on her finger under the living room light, and called Rosie, who answered on the second ring. "Will, it's 11 at night he proposed. Giovanni asked me to marry him, and I said yes." The words came out in a happy scream that probably woke the neighbors, but she didn't care. Rosie's scream was even louder, and they spent the next hour on the phone, Willow recounting every detail, reliving every moment, and when she finally hung up and went to bed, she slept with a smile on her face and a ring on her finger that promised a future that before was just an impossible dream. Who doesn't have that one confidant friend, right? Luckily, our protagonist Willow has one, and now her life is filled with only good gossip. Chapter 8. Planning and Last Attempt.
We're almost there.
The months following the proposal were a delicious mix of happiness and organized chaos, because planning a wedding, I quickly discovered, was like trying to orchestrate a symphony when half the musicians wanted to play jazz, and the other half wanted to play rock. Giovanni wanted to give me everything: a huge wedding at a prestigious venue with hundreds of guests, and a list of vendors that probably cost more than most people made in a year, while I wanted something simple, intimate, just the people who really mattered in a place that had meaning for us. "Willow, I can rent the Grand Hotel Ballroom, the same place as the gala where we met," Giovanni said one Saturday morning while we sat at the coffee shop, surrounded by wedding magazines and invitation samples scattered across the table that had become our planning operations base. "That's way too big. It has capacity for 500 people, Giovanni." I took his hand, intertwining our fingers. "I don't know 500 people. I barely know 50 people I want at my wedding," he sighed, that sound I'd already learned to recognize as him giving in but wanting to seem like he was still in control. "Okay, what about 200 people? A middle ground? 100. Maximum. Only close people. The people who really matter." I smiled at him, seeing the resistance melt under his gaze. "I want a day that's about us, not about impressing people we barely know." In the end, we reached a compromise that made us both happy. A medium-sized wedding in a small but beautiful church Giovanni used to attend as a child, followed by a reception in a private garden that belonged to a family friend of his, elegant but intimate, with fresh flowers and lights strung in the trees, and an atmosphere that would be romantic without being ostentatious. Giovanni still insisted on hiring the best photographer in the city, the best caterer, the best band, but I insisted the decorations be simple, the invitations handwritten, everything have a personal touch. Rosie was my maid of honor, obviously, and she took the role so seriously, she showed up at the coffee shop almost every day with new magazine clippings, new ideas for the dress, new suggestions for the flowers. Matteo was Giovanni's best man, and seeing the two men discuss tie colors with a seriousness they normally reserved for business was so funny, I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. "Silver or charcoal gray?" Matteo asked Giovanni as if the decision determined the fate of the universe. "Willow, what do you think?" Giovanni turned to me, and seeing the most powerful and feared man in the city consulting me about ties made my heart melt. "Charcoal gray matches better with the navy blue suits." I smiled, and the way he smiled back, like I'd solved a world problem, made all the hours of planning worth it. 4 months after the proposal, when the invitations had already been sent, when the dress was already being custom-made, when everything was practically organized, the news leaked to the press. Giovanni Campone getting married. Bride is owner of Hayes Coffee and Books, the headline screamed, and suddenly there were photographers outside the coffee shop, outside my apartment, trying to capture any moment of my life. Giovanni put discreet security around the coffee shop and apartment, men in dark suits who kept the paparazzi at a respectful distance. And although initially I found the attention embarrassing, eventually I got used to it, learning to ignore the cameras and focus on what really mattered. It was the morning after the news leaked that Patricia saw the article in the newspaper, her coffee cup stopping halfway to her lips as she read the words, as she saw the photos of me and Giovanni leaving a restaurant, him holding my hand, the ring shining obvious on my finger. "Celeste, get down here. Now!" Her voice echoed through the Hayes mansion, high-pitched and urgent. Celeste came down the stairs still in pajamas, hair messy. "What now, Mom?" Patricia turned the newspaper to her, and Celeste read, her face going through a series of expressions. Shock first, then anger, then something that looked almost like desperation. "She's marrying him? For real?" "Apparently." Patricia put the newspaper on the table, fingers drumming on the wooden surface in a nervous pattern. "And we weren't invited. Obviously. After what we did? After you gave her location to Constantine?" Celeste threw herself into the chair across from her mother. "Why would that be a surprise?" Patricia was silent for a long moment, mind clearly working, calculating, and then she leaned forward with an expression Celeste knew well, the expression that meant a plan was forming. "Maybe we should try to make peace." "What?" Celeste almost jumped out of her chair. "Why? She hates us." "With good reason. Because if Willow marries Giovanni Campone, she becomes one of the most powerful women in the city. She'll have access to resources, to connections, to an influence we'll never have." Patricia's words were calculated, cold. "And if we make peace, if she forgives us, maybe she'll help us, maybe give us access to that world." Celeste looked at her like she'd completely lost her mind. "You think she'd help us? After everything we did? After you basically tried to get her killed?" "Willow is too kind. Always has been. That was her weakness." Patricia picked up her phone, already looking for the number. "She forgave her father for everything, forgave you for all the cruelties. Maybe she'll forgive us too. It's worth a try." I was at the coffee shop helping Rosie organize a large cake order when my phone rang, and when I saw the name on the screen, my stomach dropped. Patricia Hayes. We hadn't spoken in months, since that day after the kidnapping, when Giovanni went to the mansion, and seeing her name now filled me with a mixture of anxiety and anger. "Who is it?" Rosie asked, noticing the expression on my face. "Patricia." I showed her the screen, and I saw her eyes narrow. "Don't answer. She doesn't deserve even a second of your time." But my hand was already moving, finger pressing the green button, morbid curiosity winning over common sense. "Hello? Willow, dear. Patricia's voice was too sweet, too smooth, the tone she used when she wanted something. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. I was horrible. Cruel. And you didn't deserve anything I did to you." My heart was beating too fast, a mixture of shock and distrust filling me. "Why are you saying this now?" "Because I heard about the wedding, read it in the newspaper, and I realized..." Pause. A sigh that sounded too rehearsed. "I realized I lost you, that Celeste lost you, and that we should have treated you like family, like you always deserved to be treated." The words were beautiful, but something about them sounded false, like a coin that looks like gold, but is just gold paint covering cheap metal. "Patricia, you tried to get me killed. Indirectly. You gave my location to Constantine." A heavy silence on the other end of the line, and when Patricia spoke again, there was something that almost sounded like genuine remorse, but I'd learned not to trust her. Had learned she was a talented actress when she wanted something. "I know, and I regret it. Every day. I think about what could have happened, what I almost caused, and I feel sick." "Then why did you do it?" My voice was breaking, years of pain leaking through the words. "Because I was jealous. Because you had something I never had. A real love. And I wanted to destroy it because I couldn't have it. It was selfish. It was cruel. And it was unforgivable." The words came out in a torrent. "But I'm asking anyway. One chance. Let me come to the wedding. Let me see you happy. Please." My hand was shaking holding the phone, tears burning my eyes, because a part of me, the part that was still the 12-year-old girl who desperately wanted a family, wanted to believe, wanted to forgive. "I need to think about it. I can't give you an answer now." "Okay, I understand. Thank you for at least hearing me out." Patricia hung up, and I stood there staring at the phone like it was a poisonous snake. Rosie was by my side in a second, hand on my shoulder. "Will, you're not seriously considering this, are you?" "I don't know." The tears finally fell. "I know she's lying, that she wants something, but part of me still wants a family, even if it's her." "You have a family. You have me. You have Giovanni. You don't need her." "I know, but..." I couldn't finish the sentence, because the truth was complicated, was confusing, was a mixture of wanting justice but also wanting peace. When Giovanni showed up at the coffee shop an hour later like he always did, one look at my face was enough for him to know something was wrong. What happened? I told him everything. every word of the call, and I saw fury grow in his eyes with each sentence. She wants to come to the wedding? Apparently, saying she regrets it, that she wants to see me happy. It's a lie. She wants something. Probably access to our circle, connections, money. His voice was hard, categorical. I know, but I stopped, biting my lip. What if it's true? What if she really changed? Giovanni cupped my face with both hands, forcing me to look into his eyes. Willow, people like her don't change. They just get better at pretending. I know, but part of me still wants a family, even if it's her, even knowing it's probably a trap. The tears were falling again, confusion and pain swallowing me. Something softened in his eyes, fury giving way to gentle understanding. Okay, if you want to give her a chance, if it'll bring you peace, I support it. Really? I looked at him surprised, expecting more resistance. Really, but with conditions. Security will be doubled at the wedding. If she or Celeste make any strange move, anything that seems suspicious, they're out immediately, and I won't be nice about it. His voice was firm, protective. I nodded, relief mixed with anxiety filling me. Okay, fair, very fair. And if they hurt you again, if they try to ruin our day, there won't be a third chance. Understood? Understood. I threw myself into his arms, letting him hold me, and I thought that maybe, just maybe, giving Patricia this last chance would be the closure I needed, a way to finally let go of all the resentment and pain and move forward completely. Or maybe it would be a terrible mistake. Only time would tell. Hey, this is my second to last comment, I promise. But I can tell you that the happiest moment of this video is still to come. Chapter 9, Wedding and Happily Ever After.
Forever with you.
The wedding day dawned with a blue sky so perfect it seemed to have been ordered especially for the occasion. Not a single cloud in sight, the sun shining with that golden intensity that made everything seem magical. I woke up in my apartment surrounded by Rosie and 2 other friends she'd recruited to help me get ready, and the nerves in my stomach were so intense I could barely eat the breakfast they insisted I have. You need to eat something, Will. You can't faint at the altar, Rosie said, pushing a piece of toast into my hand with a determination that wouldn't accept discussion. What if I trip walking down the aisle? What if the dress rips? What if I forget the vows? The words came out in a flood of panic, all the irrational fears I'd been suppressing for the last few weeks finally exploding. Rosie grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look into her eyes. You're not going to trip. The dress isn't going to rip. And if you forget the vows, you improvise, because Giovanni is going to be so busy looking at you like you're the most beautiful thing he's ever seen that he won't even notice. The dress was hanging on the rack, a dream in ivory silk that had been custom made over the last few weeks. Simple but elegant, with a lace bodice and a skirt that flowed like water. Exactly what I'd always imagined when I thought about weddings. In the rare moments I allowed myself to dream of a happy future. When I finally put it on, when Rosie fastened the last button on my back, and I turned to look in the mirror, the air left my lungs. I looked like a bride, a real bride. My hair was pulled back in an elegant low bun with a few loose strands framing my face. The makeup was light, but enhanced my eyes, and the dress made me look like someone who deserved to marry a man like Giovanni Campone. Tears threatened to fall, but Rosie appeared at my side with a tissue. Don't even think about ruining that makeup. The artist took an hour to do it, and she'll kill me if you smudge everything before the ceremony. But she was crying too, eyes shining with happiness. You look beautiful, Will. So beautiful that Giovanni's going to have a heart attack when he sees you. The church was small, but absolutely perfect. All ancient stone with stained glass that painted the floor with colors when the sun passed through them. Polished dark wood pews that seated exactly 100 people like I'd insisted. The guests were already seated when we arrived. A mix of close friends, Giovanni's family who had come from Italy especially for the occasion, regular customers from the coffee shop who had become part of my life. And there in the back, as I'd promised to allow, were Patricia and Celeste. They wore elegant but discreet dresses, and there were 2 of Giovanni's security guards strategically positioned near them, not so obvious to most people, but visible enough for them to know they were being watched. Patricia saw me when I entered, and something passed across her face that almost looked like real regret, but I'd learned not to trust her expressions. Rosie gave me one last tight hug before entering the church first as maid of honor, and then it was my turn, and my heart was beating so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. The wedding march began, that classic music I'd heard in so many movies, but that now played for me, and I took the first step. Giovanni was standing at the altar with Matteo beside him, and the moment our eyes met, everything else disappeared. He wore an impeccable black suit with a charcoal gray tie like we'd decided together, hair slicked back, and the expression on his face when he saw me was something I'll keep forever. His eyes widened, his mouth opened slightly, and I saw the gleam of tears he blinked away quickly, and in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty I was making the right decision. I walked down the aisle alone, because I had no one to give me away. My father had died years ago, and there was no other father figure that made sense. But I didn't feel alone because Giovanni was waiting for me. And the moment I reached the altar, the moment he took my hand, I felt I was exactly where I belonged. The priest began the ceremony with the traditional words, talking about love and commitment and partnership. And I tried to pay attention but was too aware of Giovanni's hand in mine, the way his thumb traced soft circles on my skin, the way he couldn't stop looking at me like I was a miracle. Now the groom would like to say his vows, the priest said, and Giovanni turned completely to me, both hands holding mine, and began to speak with a voice that was surprisingly emotional for such a controlled man. Willow, you saved me from an empty life, from a loneliness I didn't even realize was killing me inside. You gave me a reason to wake up happy, to want to be better, to believe I could have something good in my life without destroying it. The words came straight from the heart, raw and honest, and I promise to protect you with my life, to love you with everything I am, to make you happy every day we have together. You are my light, my peace, my future, always. The tears I'd been holding finally fell, running down my cheeks as the priest turned to me. And the bride? I took a deep breath, voice trembling but firm when I began. Giovanni, you saw me when I was invisible. You chose me when nobody wanted me. You loved me when I thought I was incapable of being loved. And you gave me a life I never thought I'd have, full of joy and safety, and a happiness that sometimes still doesn't feel real. I held his hands tighter, eyes fixed on his. I promise to be your partner in everything, to support you like you support me, to love you on good days and hard days, to be by your side no matter what comes. You are my home, my heart, my forever. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride, the priest said, and Giovanni didn't wait even half a second before pulling me close, his mouth capturing mine in a kiss that was at once gentle and intense, promise and celebration, all mixed in a moment that seemed to stop time. The church exploded in applause, and when we finally pulled apart, both grinning like idiots, we turned to walk back down the aisle as husband and wife. I passed by Patricia and Celeste, and I saw tears in both their eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were real or just another performance. The reception was in the garden exactly as we'd planned, with round tables scattered under the trees, lights strung creating a fairy tale atmosphere when the sun began to set, fresh flowers everywhere filling the air with a sweet perfume. We ate, drank, danced, and it was perfect in a way that only simple moments shared with people we love can be. Our first dance as husband and wife was to a soft Italian song Giovanni had chosen, and while he guided me across the makeshift dance floor, hands firm on my waist, pulling me so close our bodies were practically glued together, he whispered words in Italian in my ear that I didn't understand, but that made my heart melt by the way they were said. "What did you say?" I asked, looking up to see his face. I said, "You're the most beautiful woman who ever existed, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life reminding you of that." His smile was so full of love, it made tears threaten to return. After the dance, after the toasts from Rosie and Matteo that were hilarious and moving at the same time, after cutting the cake and throwing the bouquet that Rosie caught with a determination that made everyone laugh, I was getting a glass of water when Celeste approached. My entire body tensed automatically, years of conditioning preparing me for some verbal attack, but she stopped at a respectful distance, hands nervously clasped in front of her body. "Willow, congratulations." "Thank you." My voice came out cautious, guarded. She stopped, eyes filling with tears that seemed genuine, but I'd seen her cry on command many times before. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Really, I was horrible to you, my whole life, and you didn't deserve any of it. I studied her face, looking for signs of lies, of manipulation, but all I saw was something that looked like real regret. Why? Why did you treat me like that? Because I was jealous. Because Dad loved you more, and I knew it, and it made me angry. And when he died, and you kept being good despite everything, it made me even angrier because you were everything I wasn't. The words came out in an honest torrent. I don't expect forgiveness. Not even close. But I wanted you to know that I recognize how wrong I was, and that you deserve all this happiness. All of it. I was silent for a long moment, processing the words, trying to decide if I believed them. "Thank you for being honest." For the first time. Pause. "I don't know if I can forgive. Not yet. But maybe someday. That's more than I deserve." Celeste nodded slightly and walked away, and I watched her go. Part of me wanting to believe in the change. Another part still cautious. Giovanni appeared at my side a moment later, arm wrapping around my waist. "Did she bother you?" "No," she apologized. "Really, I think." I looked at him. "Do you think people can change?" "Some people, maybe, with work and time." He pulled me close. "But today isn't about her or the past. It's about us. About our future." And he was right. I spent the rest of the reception focusing on the present, on happiness, on the people who really mattered. And when we finally left under a rain of flower petals the guests threw, getting into the decorated car that would take us to the airport for our honeymoon in Italy, I felt I was finally closing the door on everything that had hurt me before. Italy was more beautiful than any photo or movie could capture. Giovanni took me to the village where he grew up, introduced me to his family, who welcomed me with warm hugs and an absurd amount of food, showed me the places from his childhood, and shared memories he'd never told anyone. We walked ancient cobblestone streets, drank wine on balconies overlooking the sea, made love in a bed with linen sheets that smelled of lavender and sun. On the last night before we returned home, we were on a balcony overlooking the Mediterranean Sea that stretched to the horizon like a carpet of dark blue speckled with silver where the moon reflected. The breeze was warm, carrying the smell of salt and wildflowers, and Giovanni was behind me, arms wrapped around my waist, chin resting on my shoulder. Can you believe it all started with "Nobody wants you"? I spoke softly, looking at the stars that shone more intensely here than anywhere I'd ever seen. And I proved her wrong, because I want you, always have, since that dance. His voice vibrated against my back. And I want you, forever. I turned in his embrace so I could look at his face illuminated by moonlight. Forever. And you know the best part? He cupped my face with both hands, thumbs tracing my cheeks. What? You'll never hear "Nobody wants you" again, because I want you. My family wants you. Rosie wants you. And you are loved, Willow. Completely, deeply, unconditionally loved. Tears ran down my face, but they were happy tears. Tears of gratitude for a life that had changed so completely in such a short time. Thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for loving me. Always, my Cinderella. He kissed me under the Italian stars, and in that moment, I thought about everything I'd survived. All the cruelties, all the humiliations, all the nights crying in the tiny room wishing for a different life. And I thought about how one night at a charity gala, one dance with a dangerous stranger, had changed everything. How the cruelest words I'd ever heard, "Nobody wants you," became the catalyst for finding someone who wanted me more than anything. Patricia had tried to separate us. Celeste had tried to destroy me. A dangerous rival had kidnapped me. But love had won, like it always wins when it's real, when it's strong, when it's built on trust and respect, and a connection that goes beyond the surface. Willow and Giovanni, Cinderella and the Mafia boss. A story that began with rejection and ended with a love so strong nothing could break it. Because some happy endings don't just happen in fairy tales. Some happen in real life, to real people, in real moments. And when they do, when you find someone who sees you, who chooses you, who loves you despite and because of all your imperfections, you hold on with everything you have and never let go. We returned home a week later, tanned and happy, and so completely in love that Rosie rolled her eyes and said we were being painfully cute. Giovanni expanded the coffee shop with me, opening a second location I'd always dreamed of. We had regular dinners with his family who visited frequently. We built a life that was ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. And every time I looked at the ring on my finger, every time I woke up in his arms, every time he walked into the coffee shop and smiled just for me, I thought, "Nobody wants you," she said. But she was so wrong, because someone wanted me and loved me. Someone had walked across a crowded ballroom just to ask me for a dance, and that dance had changed everything. Hi, loves. You have no idea how many nights I stayed up writing this story. The phrase "nobody wants you" came from a real experience a friend of mine had with her family. And when she told me, my heart broke. I knew I needed to turn that pain into something beautiful. And a fun fact, Giovanni was almost named Alessandro. I changed it at the last minute because I wanted a name that sounded both dangerous and romantic at the same time. And you know the gala scene where he crosses the ballroom? I rewrote it 7 times until I captured exactly the tension I wanted. Another fun fact is that Patricia was inspired by stepmothers from various classic fairy tales, but with a modern and psychological twist. I wanted you to feel her evil, but also understand that Willow needed that inner strength to grow. The kidnapping scene made me cry while I was writing it. Seriously, Giovanni saving her was cathartic for me too. Thank you for reading my modern Cinderella. You're amazing. With love, Lena. And if you want to fall in love with another true love story, click on the video appearing on your screen now.